Today we're going to talk about writing fractions as decimals, okay? And when we write fractions as decimals, this is the reason why we learned that place value chart at the very beginning of the year, where when I think about my decimals, if I have a number that looks like 1.357, tell me what place value my 3 is in. It's in the tenths. What about my 5? Hundredths. And my 7? Okay, your book breaks this into sections, but we're going to put it together. And what I mean by that is they break it down and they talk about converting fractions to decimals only to the tenths and the hundredths as one lesson, and then they do the thousands as another lesson. Okay? We're going to put this all together. That doesn't mean it's going to be any harder, but it's the same concept, so I don't understand why they break it apart. So let me give you an example here. They may give us a fraction that looks, a decimal. Let's go fraction actually. They may give us a fraction that looks like this. Okay? Read this fraction for me. 2 tenths is how we would read this fraction, right? Do you agree? Hold your hand up. Okay. Now I have to think about that place value chart. If I want to write 2 tenths as a decimal, what would that look like? That's what I should be asking myself right now. So I might talk myself through this. Well, I have 0 whole numbers, I have no wholes, and I have 2 tenths. Well, I know the first place to the right of a decimal is the tenths place. How many tenths do I have, Gabe? 2. So I would write a 2 in the tenths place. This decimal, 0.2, or I could write it as 0.2, is the same thing or equivalent to 2 tenths written as a fraction. Does that make sense to you? Okay. So if I have one that looks like 0.7, how would I write that as a fraction? First of all, how do I read this decimal? Who can read this decimal for me? Taylor, can you read this decimal for me? This one right here. 7 tenths. So how do we think I would write that as a fraction? Yeah, 7 over 10, because this fraction reads 7 tenths. Okay? As silly as it sounds, folks, that's about all we're doing. Okay? Now, don't get me wrong, there are some other steps along the way. Like, what if I have 7 over, let's do 35 over 100. How would I write this as a decimal? How do I read this fraction, Landon? I read this fraction 3500, so how would I write it as a decimal, Emily? 0.35. Can you tell me why I write it as 0.35? Numerator. Okay? But my denominator is telling me the place value of it, the hundredths. So what if I had, this one's going to throw you off, 35 thousandths. How would I write that as a decimal? What do you think, Pierce?
0.035.
Absolutely. Okay? because I have to have that last place value in the thousandths place. So what if I had something that looked like, how would I write this? 1 3/10, Caleb H. Okay. What if I wanted to put it as 1 30/100? Keely? Okay. What if I had 1 3/1000? Leslie? What would this be? 3 thousandths. So I need my 3 in the thousandths place. How would I get it there? So like this? Yes. The zeros come in front of the 3. Okay, so this decimal right here, 1.003, is the same thing as this fraction. They mean the same thing. Now, my question to you, Alexa, why would I need to know how to do this? Or if I want to put numbers and decimals or fractions on a number line, which we're going to do tomorrow, I want to have a way that I can compare them easily. All right, folks, so here's a brain buster. I'm going to use one that you know. I have 1/4, okay? I don't have this written with a denominator of 10, 100, or 1,000. So how do I convert this to a decimal? What do you think, Landon? Nope, you're trying to go by memory of what it means. I want to know, how do I convert it to that? How? Why? What did you do?
I took, instead of, since it's 1/4, all I have to do is divide 100 in the 4th.
You're using equivalent fractions is what you're doing, but you're kind of doing it backwards because you're doing it in your head, which is fine. Okay? I can do this one of 2 ways. Yes, Di, I know you're going to be late. I apologize. Okay? I can do this one of 2 ways, but you have to know how to do this at least one of these 2 ways or you won't be able to do your homework. I can create equivalent fractions if I know an easy way to get this denominator to 10 or 100 or 1,000. Okay? I could create equivalent fractions. 4 times 25 is... If I have 4 quarters, I have, okay? And if I take the bottom times 25, I have to take the top times 25, right? What's 1 times 25? We can do 25/100 as a decimal, right? How do I do that, Taylor? You know why I called on you? Okay. 0.25. Okay, very good. Okay, so I could create an equivalent fraction, or even if I had like 2/5. What can I make this denominator that would be real easy as a 10 or 100? Can I convert this to a 10 easily? 5 times 2. 5 times 2 is? If I take the bottom times 2, what do I have to do to the top, Marcus? 2 times 2 is? Do I know how to write 4/10 as a decimal? Huh? 0.4. Okay? So that's one way you can do it. You can create those equivalent fractions. But what if it's, and there's no way I can make 7 into 10 or 100. So where do I go from there? Okay? What does this fraction bar mean? It means divide. So I can take 3 and divide it by 7. Yes, my smallest number's inside the box. Okay, I know it's been a no-no that you've been told you can never do that. Okay, now we can. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a decimal point and a 0. That 0 is going to come straight up into my answer. Because I'm trying to convert it to a decimal, right? So it makes sense that I add a decimal point and a 0, right? Okay, now it's not how many times does 7 go into 3, Gabe. Now it's how many times does 7 go into 30. How close can I get to 30 without going over? 4. So right above this 0, I hope you're paying attention. Right above the 0 that I just added, that's where my 4 is going to be. Okay? 4 times 7 is? This is basic division. We are going to have math. Go ahead and pack your stuff up, get your math, and I'll tell you what it is. Okay, when we subtract this, 30 minus 28 is? Okay, 3 becomes a 2. This becomes 10. I know, we're late. Okay, 10 minus 8 is? 2. Okay, but I can't stop there. I have to add another 0 and take it down because I want to have at least 2 decimal points here. Okay? How many times does 7 go into 20? Twice, giving me, when I subtract, I get 6. Okay? You would add another 0 and another decimal point and carry that out 3 spots, but you could say that 3/7 is pretty close to 0.42. Okay? So you have to add that decimal point and that 0. DI, you may go ahead and go, but I do want to see you in the morning to go over this lesson with you, okay? Caleb. Your homework is going to be DI, this is for you too. You need your workbooks. You're doing 67 and 68 odds. Okay? 67 and 68, you're doing the odds. 67 and 68, you're doing the odds. Yes, but we're going to do another example, dividing and changing it to a... The lesson will be up if you guys want to watch it tonight too, by the way. Give me a decimal that's equivalent to 4/5. Okay? Your 4 is inside the box. 5 is your divisor outside of the box. What is my first step? Chelsea?
Add a decimal and put a 0.
Add a decimal point and a 0. Now it's not how many times does 5 go into 4, but it's how many times does 5 go into 40.
And then you want to carry your decimal.
I want to carry my decimal point straight up too. Marcus? 8. 8 times 5 is 40 minus 40. Once I move that decimal point up into my answer, I can then look at this as like a whole number. Okay, don't let that decimal point throw you off. Okay, notice how this came out and I have 0 down here. Since I don't have a number, I can stop dividing. Because what this is telling me is it's telling me 4/5 is equal to 8/10. If we pay attention to how we create those equivalent fractions, I can multiply 5 times what and get 2, or 10. I'm over here. 5 times what gives me 10? Okay, that gives me 10 as a denominator. 4 times what gives me, or 4, what do I have to multiply 4 by? My numerator. 4 times 2 is 8/10 is an equivalent fraction to 4/5. We know how to write that as a decimal. Okay, so there's your proof that it works.